Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramon, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast. Steve, Ramona.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona, and I am thrilled to have you join us today. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the idea of doing business and life, living life with a purpose, serving others, and yes, achieving success. We believe that when we can approach our work and our lives with a servant's heart, we can truly make a difference. Remember, we created this show for you because we want everyone to be motivated, inspired, and educated to make an impact in your world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, community leader, or simply someone looking to bring more purpose into your daily life, this podcast is here to support and uplift you. With that being said, I always talk about impact. We're going across the pond, as they say in the UK. I believe John's in the UK, right, John?
No, I'm actually in San Diego.
Oh, are you from the UK?
No, I'm actually Ireland.
Ireland, okay. Yeah. Well, I missed two of those, and see, hosts can screw up as well, and it's live raw, and that's okay. And I love San Diego, so he's on the other river. Yeah.
No, I'm originally Irish, so I'll forgive you for confusing me with.
There you go. Well, my Irish family will forgive me too, I hope. Well, welcome to the show, John. I'm super excited. You've been extremely successful with some of the work you've done. Let's talk about Pipeliner and SalesPop, those businesses. What inspired you to get those going?
Well, Pipeliner CRM was founded by Nicholas Kimla in Vienna about 16 years ago. And about 12 years ago, he moved the business to the US. And I had actually started my own consulting company at that point. And he was one of my first customers. And my issue had always been with CRM, Steve, is that when I ran these other businesses, and we had like Salesforce, and that is, I ran this global consultancy company, Hathwaite Spin Selling, right? So sales methodology, went around the world, training global companies how to use the spin selling methodology. But my biggest issue is we couldn't embed it in the workflow of the organization, because the CRM, even and at the time we were using Salesforce because the parent company had a big install. I couldn't even do it on our own install of Salesforce. So fast forward, when Nicholas contacted me and we were doing some work together, I said, I love Pipeliner CRM. I love it because you can very easily, you could bring alive any sales methodology, and you can reinforce it with not just with your stages, but with the steps inside the stages. You can even make them mandatory. You can have all the documents, playbooks, everything. And so he said, well, why don't you come on board and, help me bring this to market? So I was like, okay, sounds like a good idea. So that's how I got in with Pipeliner CRM. And then SalesPop was really our we're big into education and learning. We wanted to do something primarily for salespeople to begin with, was like an altruistic give back, and that's create a lot of really high quality content for them to help educate them. And so I started doing that by interviewing, global experts and we expanded beyond sales, but today there's like over 1,500 videos, and there's lots of ebooks and blog posts and everything covering sales, marketing, leadership, entrepreneurial. So we see that as our give back, because as I said, like, we're very big into education, and we also are very big into elevating the role of the salesperson.
Yeah, great education. That's a servant's heart right there, especially when you give it freely to people, which I talk to coaches all the time. They don't want to give up their IP. I'm like, give it up. They can't use it until you teach them. You're laughing because you understand that. So what did you learn as CEO of Hathwaite? How do you say that again?
Hathwaite, yeah.
Yeah, I did say Hathwaite and Omega Performance influence your role today. What did you learn, and what people could learn from that you learned?
That's a great that's a great question. I think the biggest thing is efficiency. To be honest, efficiency and productivity. One of the things that I was fortunate I was able to do when I took over both of those businesses. The first one I took them over just after around the time of the financial crisis, right? So revenues were on the slide because everybody's revenues were on the slide at that point. Everybody, the years before had been loads of revenue because people had full budgets, money was cheap, and they didn't. And to be honest, and people didn't even care that much about the expense side and the bottom line because they're making so much money. So, but anyway, so I took over during the financial crisis, and I thought, okay, well, we're going to have to do a lot of rationalization here, and if really dissect the business and figure out how we can still return a profit, but on less revenue as we grow back because of the economic situation. And so that's what I learned. To be honest, Steve, is a lot of companies never don't focus on the expense side of the business, right? And they tend to scale by people, and I think that's the worst thing you can possibly do is just scale by people. And what I mean by that is that you say, oh, there's something that needs to be done now, maybe we're at a different point in our business, and well, let's hire somebody to do that. And instead of that, going, well, let's see the most efficient way of executing what that needs to be done. Can it be done by somebody here? Can we automate it? Could it be done by a contract? All of those sort of things. And one of the things that I did at the time, which had a big impact, was obviously the salespeople had commission, so they were already incented, to hit their targets. But the parent company was more interested in our operating profit, right? That was what I was getting measured on. So I thought, okay, how can I get all these other people in the business involved, right? The project managers, the customer support, the product development folks. And I thought, hang on, I introduced a bonus structure that if we hit our operating profit target, then anything above that, then they all got paid out extra money. So now they were incented as well. So now for the first time, and you'll love this, Steve, right? I had customer support or product development people or project managers asking salespeople to give a breakdown of the profitability of the deal they just did.
Wow, I do love that. That's
And asking them and
fantastic.
saying, well, why are you giving this away free?
Yep.
So one of the things that I was able to bring from those experiences is, and this has been throughout my career, this has been something that I have lived by, is that I believe you can achieve a lot more with a handful of highly motivated, highly skilled people who really know what they're doing than you ever will with like having hundreds of people but being inefficient, and and people doing parts of jobs really well, but other parts not, because you don't really have a job for them. And that kind of thing is, I really think a small bunch of talented, motivated people will always outperform a larger organization.
Yeah. I'm totally with team is I'm a big sports guy. Team is what it's all about. You don't have a team, you can't do it alone. That's such a great story. You said something earlier that I'm very curious. I'm sure audience is spin selling. Give us a little brief synopsis of that. It's very unique. I've never heard it, but I'd love to hear more.
Well, spin selling it was developed by Neil Rackham, and he did research in the 60s and 70s. And he actually took a bunch of researchers and he went out and he did it pretty much almost a time and motion study on salespeople to see if he could isolate what the best salespeople did. And so he was able to isolate it and then codify it into spin selling, which is basically situation questions, problem questions, implication questions, and then needs payoff. So situation is what's going on. The problem is, okay, let's identify this is the issue you have, Steve. What are the implications now if you don't solve this issue, or if you do solve this issue? What are the positive? What are the implications negative? And then, okay, if I was able to do that for you, blah, 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 are you interested in moving ahead? So it's a methodology, it's a questioning and developing methodology, because one of the things I think sometimes people, especially salespeople, struggle with is that they go in and they, ask a question, and maybe you say, yeah, that's, yeah, we're having a bit of an issue with that. And I hear, oh, issue with that. I think I can solve that. So I'm going to dive straight into solution mode now. However, if I took it a stage further and actually went into the implications and that and dug a little deeper, I might discover that's actually an issue you don't care that much about. You're prepared to live with. It's not the most important thing. And now as we continue our conversation and we go, as I expand on all these issues, we get to the ones that really matter and maybe even surprise you a little bit as we explore them. You go, oh, that's even more important than I thought. But you can see where the trap is, where a lot of salespeople, the minute they hear, oh, that's an issue I can solve, they just pounce on it. And it could be the wrong thing they're jumping on.
Yeah, because you could have, time is such a big factor in business.
Yeah. And
what
by
you're
the way,
focusing
the book, the spin selling book that Neil brought out, still, I think, the best selling business book of its type of all time, still sells many copies every year. Neil still goes around and
speaks.
gives talks around the world. But
Yeah.
very. If you've never looked at spin selling, you should take a look at it. It's a very interesting, and as I said, it was an actual primary sourced research project.
Great tip for my audience and me. I'm definitely going to take a look at it. I'm actually traveling this weekend, so I'm going to grab it and read it while I'm traveling.
Yeah.
I love to be able to have that, to be able to do that. Now, John, you got a unique background, martial arts.
Yes.
How does the martial art, I'm curious about this because I always wanted to do it, never did it. How has martial arts influenced you, inspired you, or helped you with your sales and marketing and your businesses?
Oh yeah, in so many different ways, and I have to say, I think the first thing is in martial arts, one of the first things that you learn is that there's going to be bigger, faster, stronger, more flexible. There's always going to be people who can do certain things better than you or attributes it better than you. So when you start your martial arts journey, it can be very demoralizing if you're looking around and going, oh, I can't do that, or look at he's at this height, all that, or she's this. The key is to understand that your competitor is not the people around you. Your competitor is yourself. And when you go to a class or a session, you have to ask yourself at the end of that, did I give my best? Did I improve on where I was last week or last month or whatever? And so that's one of the biggest lessons I learned is not to it's fine to go look at people and admire them and say, oh, I'd love to, oh, I like the way they do that. I'm going to try and emulate that or whatever. However, not using people always as a comparison, but coming back to yourself and saying, okay, what am I supposed to be? Where am I going? And am I progressing on that journey? So that's the number one thing, is learning to be in competition with yourself. And the second thing, to be honest, Steve, is just resilience and the core strength that people have. Like I have seen shy little kids or whatever, who come and they start and they do their first test, and they're crying and they're afraid and they want to run back to their mom and dad, but the master helps them through the test and everything. And then the change afterwards of putting yourself out of your comfort zone, doing something like that in front of me, all of that, it's amazing. And so it's a great confidence builder as well. And I think it's the other thing, it helps you confront your fears, because one of the things, like most people, we're not hardwired to get to want to get smacked in the head by people, right? We're hardwired to try and avoid that. Mm-hmm. So one of the other lessons from martial arts is learning to be okay in an uncomfortable situation, right? So if I go to, if you go to a spar, and this is why I always say to all the kids is don't be afraid of sparring and don't be afraid of going to competitions, because if you step in the ring to spar, right, at any level, doesn't matter, the lower, the local level, or you're at your dojang or whatever it is you already are doing something that 99% of the rest of the world won't do, right? 99% of the rest of the world is not deliberately standing up and saying, I'm going to put myself in this situation where I could actually get hurt, right? And I think that is, and I just instill that is that it's the showing up and having the guts to put your 2 feet in the ring. Whatever happens after that doesn't matter, to be honest. It doesn't matter. You're already a winner. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like being comfortable with putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. And guess what, Steve? Most people discover you get smacked a couple of times, you go, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Now, I mean, clearly if you get knocked out, that's a bit different. But I always think like the first time, just God forbid you ever get yourself into a situation or whatever, but I always think the first time you get hit, you don't want that to be in a situation outside where you're so shocked by by getting hit that you can't focus on anything else.
Great lessons. Great. I played football, not that it's martial arts, but I remember as a kid getting hit the first time and then a few more times. It's like you're saying, really not that bad. Not that we want to do 24/7. You don't want to get hit that much, but an hour a day or when you're training, that's good.
Exactly.
Talk about your book. I'm excited. I looked at some of it. It sounds very informative and inspirational for people. Talk about the book, name of the book, or where they can get it.
Yeah, so the book is Winning the Battle for Sales, Lessons from the World's Greatest Military Victories. You can get it on Amazon and all good book retailers. That book is interesting, Stephen, just in the genesis of it, in that, and this is good advice for anybody out there who's considering writing a book or whatever, is it came from one blog post. So I was writing a short blog post, and I was considering when salespeople are in a rut, right? When just, your deals are going south, everything is, and you're just like, nothing's working for me. I always likened it to, like, I'm a big football soccer fan, right? And sometimes you'll have the guy who's supposed to score the goals, right? And he's in a drought, right? He couldn't score to save his life. And oftentimes it's just like, they just need to just keep trying, and eventually like some ball like goes in off their knee or whatever, ugly goal, but doesn't matter. They've got the breakthrough and then they go back to scoring regularly. So I was looking at that from a sales perspective, and I can see, because it can become self-perpetuating and that in your mind, right? Self-fulfilling, if you like. Oh, I'm going to lose this next deal because I've just lost all the other ones. And I was reading about George Washington and the Continental Army and how, they'd reached that point of the war where things were going really badly. And most of the people in his army, when they were in Valley Forge, I think most of the people in his army, their contracts were up. They had signed up for a period of time or whatever. And they're all about to head back, and there was illness. Anyway, there was a disaster, and that would have been the end of the American Revolution had Washington then said, no, we'll cross the Delaware and we'll do this, surprise attack on the Hessians, I think it was. And so anyway, he went across the river and had this surprise attack, and they won. And just that little victory changed everything, right? It changed the whole trajectory of the war. More people came to sign up and all of that, and people believed in victory, right? It was pretty limited victory, but the point of it was that it was a victory, right? And they did something surprising. And so that blog post did pretty good. And then we talked to McGraw-Hill, and they said, well, why don't you turn it into a book? And that's what we did. So I went back and I worked with one of my colleagues and said, okay, let's find, and I actually did history in college, so I'm interested in history. And I said, let's find, battles and comparable things to this, and let's map a sales lesson to it. So therefore, when you're in a sales situation, you can do that recall exercise by just going, oh yeah, I remember that's like David and Goliath's, story, or that's like the Battle of Islamwala or whatever. And that was the genesis of the book, and it was a lot of fun to do. And we even got a cartoonist to do little cartoons at the beginning of every chapter. So yeah, it's a fun project.
What a great project, because I think military, there's so many business lessons in military. Oh, yeah. That's what caught my eye, because I love military veterans on my show. So I really appreciate you writing that. And what I'm hearing too, which in sales is so important, is the decision. George Washington made the decision, hey, we've lost, or we're going away, we're going to put our tail between our legs and we're done. But making the decision, we're going to fight one more time, tipped America. We probably wouldn't be sitting here today, maybe, if the decision was to quit, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that resilience and being able to pick yourself up when
Yeah.
you're being constantly knocked down, that's really important. I think sometimes when you're in that rut, well, you need to go back and you need to look at some of your past successes and sort of revisit them and say, what did I do for that? And just check in with yourself and say, am I doing everything the right? Because even back to martial arts for a moment, Steve, one
Hmm.
of the things that is, I'll be going up there tonight, right? I could conceivably, I could go in tonight and we could end up spending the whole class doing basic stances, right? Ones I've learned, I don't know how many thousands of times I've done these. I've learned them years ago, but I guarantee you, I'll get corrected on pretty much every single one of them because you just get into little bad habits. You forget a little bit, you get a little lazy, this. And that's why you have to constantly revisit the foundations. And I think it's the same for salespeople. It's sometimes when you're in a rut and when things aren't going your way, it's good to go back and say, am I doing all of the basics? Am I covering everything? Or am I taking a few shortcuts? Are there things, and that's why it's good to look back at some previous successes and examine the process and say, oh, I did this and I did this and I did this. I didn't do those recently. I need to get back to doing that. And so I think that's really, really important as well, is to go back and look at what made you successful when you were successful, and then check that you're doing all of those things, but you're also doing all of the fundamentals as well.
But that's a great sales tip, especially if you make high ticket sales.
Mhm.
Game changer. I mean, that could make somebody listening to this thousands, if not millions of dollars just
Yeah.
doing that. And I love the fact of your foundation of basics. Every sport does that. They
Yeah.
start their, NFL starting, our football, not
Yeah.
the European football, they're starting their mini camps and, like they want to cut them back. And they're like, no, we need to practice. You're
Yeah.
so right.
And somebody told, or I read somewhere, somebody told me, like, Kobe Bryant used to go in, I think, at 5 in the morning or something ridiculous. Like, he was first into training, and people assumed, somebody assumed like he'd be going in there practicing all these fancy trick shots and everything. And when somebody asked him, they said no. He told them, he says, no, I do the same high school drills I always did. And because he knew that it was the fundamentals, him having the fundamentals like so down that he could do all the other stuff.
God, that story is so parallel with sales.
Hmm.
Get it back up tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. You had 5 no's today. Tomorrow might be I love this, John. I just met John, just so you guys know, just before this show. So I'm learning so much about him because we complex sales because of this old hard head. We make it different because it's not that hard. It really
Right.
isn't. I know people are listening like, oh, you got to be in my shoes. Well, get his book and I think it'll help you. Let's do that. Let's get a little personal. Can I get a little personal with you?
Sure.
So
I am
what's the
Irish, so
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's like you can see me shifting uncomfortably in my seat.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to give it to you then. So Friday night, what is John doing on Friday night?
Whoa, Friday night. Well, often on Friday nights here when the weather's nice, which is a lot of the time, is we, myself and my wife, we finish the week off by taking the dog down to the seafront and we walk 4 or 5 miles with the dog. And that's often our Friday night. Or we, if it's a really nice evening, we may do that and then crack open a bottle of wine and sit in the backyard and have a glass of wine. So that's Friday I think is always you have to mark some demarcation between that and the rest of the week.
Yep. And that's why I picked Friday. Thank you.
Yeah.
See, this guy's brilliant.
Mhm.
That's why, because people go, why do you ask people Friday if not Saturday? Because it's the end of the week and most people need to, what'd you call it?
Yeah, just demark. Just say,
Demark, yeah.
that was the end of that week, and even if you're doing some work over the weekend, that doesn't matter. It's just say that week this is closed now, and you got stuff you have to do tomorrow or whatever. That's fine, but just close it. But mark it with the close, because I think that's the other thing. And Steve, I'll just share you one tip.
Yeah.
This was given to me by somebody else, and his name escapes me. Somebody I interviewed, but he said, like, so when he's prospecting, right, he said, okay, who likes prospecting, and prospecting is a grind and all of that. But what he will do is he would say, okay, I'm going to make 50 calls today, and if I secure an appointment out of it, or media, I'm going to reward myself with watching a movie tonight. And then he said, okay, if I make those 50 calls and I don't land the appointment, he goes, if I can honestly say there's nothing else I could have done better today, then I won't give myself the movie, but maybe I'll award myself some ice cream or a treat of some kind because I put the effort in. But I thought that was a real interesting way of doing it, of even like saying, okay, I didn't hit the target today that I wanted to hit, but did I do everything I could have done to hit the target? And if not, then maybe it's just the day that's in it.
Audience, you can see why this guy's so successful. That is so brilliant because we get so hard on each other. It's so good. Yeah, you didn't get those two appointments, but you taught the people and you did everything that you're supposed to do per your plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we get down ourselves with the end goal.
Yep.
And not that because we're not in control of that. We're not control the other person on the phone call on the other side. We're just not. But we can control ourselves and what we do and how we do it. This has been a brilliant show, an incredible show, John. I want to thank you. What's the name of the podcast again and the name of the book?
Yeah, SalesPop is the podcast. I'd go and encourage you to check it out on the salespop.net or just go to YouTube. We have a very robust YouTube channel. And the book is Winning the Battle for Sales. And then, please go check out pipelinersales.com and take a trial of Pipeliner CRM and see the difference for yourself.
And audience, do that, especially if you're struggling with your CRM. I hear it once a week. I don't have, well, I like my CRM. Well, now guess what? I've got a CRM I can refer them to, which is great because if you're in any sales at all, you have to have a CRM or at least minimum a spreadsheet, but get a CRM. It's much easier.
Yeah, you need a CRM.
Yeah. Well, thank you, audience. Me and John appreciate you watching or listening to this podcast. It's been great. Don't forget my TV show Fridays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Together We Serve. It's got the ability to really do what we're doing here, but for 56 minutes. And also, I want to thank all of you for watching and listening. Me and John so appreciate that. I know you probably got something out of this. Reach out on YouTube or on my podcast platform. Send me a comment. I'll get it to John, or reach out to John if you have a question. He's a servant heart. He'll get that answer, or his team will, and actually help you move forward in your life and make that impact I talked about. With that being said, we'll see you all in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart.